Taylor. Congressman, thank you for taking the time.
Neil, thanks for having me.
You know, with every one of these remembrances, and I think they're important, I'm sure you think they're important, and I think the reading of the names in Manhattan, I think that's important. I think that's a good thing to do. It's a good reminder. But for so many, my own sons included, before they were born. And I'm wondering how you keep that alive for them and how you keep that meaningful for them when it's just history to them.
Well, there's no question that their experience will be different for you and I and everyone else who was alive that day. Of course, it's a very deeply ingrained day in our minds, and we all know where we were. You know, I was just where you are a couple of weeks ago with my own son, 5 years old, and we were looking over at the streaming waterfall at the memorial there. And you know, he's a little young now, but I want him to know. I want him to know, and I will teach him what happened that day, how our communities and cities and country came together. And then, of course, folks like myself and friends who I serve with fought for this country. And my son is actually named after someone who gave the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. So I think it's important that not only do we remember and pay tribute to those we lost, not just for them, but for ourselves as well and for the next generations to come.
You know, Congressman, you're pretty modest about this, but as a former Navy SEAL, and you put a lot on the line for your country, if you were to have ever seen that Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and all of these nefarious elements and terror groups would still be alive and well, we can argue whether they're on the run or not, but they're alive and well. They seem to pop up under new names and like cockroaches, whether Boko Haram or any cascade of bad guys and groups. What would you have thought of that? That almost 2 decades later, this problem persists?
Well, that's a good point. You know, I think it's important also to remember today that we're still at war, that folks are still in harm's way, that, you know, I represent a district who has many people who are still in harm's way, still taking the fight to the enemy, and that this type of war, this type of conflict is, you know, ideological, and we don't know when it may end. And yes, you're absolutely right. The threat is a networked one with the ability to rise up and use the internet or anything else to either be radicalized or say that they're, you know, that give their allegiance to this supposed caliphate or this person or that person. You know, it's a tough fight, and it's one that is a generational one. And I'm not sure exactly when it's going to end, but it is important to recognize that we are still at war and we are still in harm's way.
Do you think it could happen again?
I do. I don't think that you have 100% security, or you can't obtain 100% security. It's very difficult to do so. So, God forbid it ever does. But I think that the threat's out there. You know, we have obviously amazing men and women on the front lines, not just in the military, but in first responders and law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies that have prevented this, that have successfully stopped attacks since then. Yeah. But to think it can't happen again would be a little bit naive.
You know, Congressman, I was counting this up, so my numbers are suspicious because of my math, so go ahead and argue them. But I believe there have been 11 follow-up attempted airplane attacks since 9/11 that got very close to happening, being pulled off, whether it's with the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, and on and on. And other attacks that were planned in foil long before anyone got on any plane. What do you think it is about airplanes and this strategy of terrorizing us that is still the preferred method?
Well, it certainly meets the definition of a terrorist attack, right? I mean, it's sensational. It gets a ton of attention. You don't have, you know, it doesn't have to be as successful an attack as 9/11 to of course, create tremendous fear, widespread fear in a nation. So, I understand why it's the preferred method, but I am thankful that we have so many folks out there that are working 24/7 to prevent this type of thing from happening on our homeland again.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much, and for your service to this country as well. I don't think you have to be on the right or left to just appreciate that for sheer patriotism.
Agree.
Thank you, sir.